Okay. Hello. We are so excited to be doing this panel. I am Oriana Leckert, the Director of Publishing and Comics Outreach at Kickstarter, and I am stoked to be joined by this incredibly illustrious crew. I'm just going to say a couple things about Kickstarter, and then I will let all of these amazing panelists tell you who they are. Yeah, it's a really good time to be doing comics on Kickstarter. At this point, comics creators have run more than 11,000 successful projects, raised more than $137 million from more than 900,000 backers. 2020, despite all of its chaos and horror, was Kickstarter Comics' best year ever, with nearly $26 million raised, which is $10 million more than we had raised in 2019. And so far, 2021 looks like it's going to be just as successful. I checked this morning, we've had more than $14 million raised by 1,300 projects so far this year, and it's not even half done. And the coolest thing, the current success rate for comics projects is sitting at 76%, which is more than double the site average. Absolutely wild. Yeah. This is a panel about running your first Kickstarter campaign. So hopefully everybody out there watching is going to be really excited to do the same. I'm going to now introduce each of our incredible panelists and let them tell you something about themselves. I'm going to start with Jeff Smith, whose project just funded last night. So most recent exciting congratulations, Jeff and the Cartoon Books team. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I've been self-publishing for 30 years. In fact, this July will be the 30th anniversary of Bone #1. That was my first comics project, Bone. And since then, I've self-published a sci-fi noir story called Wrassle, which I did in around 2013. And I've done other projects in between, like Shazam, The Monster Society of Evil, and some children's books like Little Mouse Gets Ready for Toon Books. And then for the 30th anniversary of Bone, I decided I would do my third self-published project and ended up doing it on Kickstarter, and it's called Tuki, Fight for Fire. It's the story of the first family to champion fire in Africa 2 million years ago.
Heck yeah. I'm going to just round it.
Heck yeah.
I'm going to go around the way that my video is laid out. So that's Tina Horn next. Tina, tell us something.
Hi, I'm Tina Horn. So I'm the creator and writer of a comic called Safe Sex, which we sort of stylize as SFSX. And this first book, Safe Sex Protection, was published by Image in 2019. And so we just kickstarted earlier this year, 2021, the second book, which is called Safe Sex Terms of Service. And I do a bunch of other things. I do a podcast called Why Are People Into That? And a lot of nonfiction and journalism, all of which is related back to sexuality and gender, and in particular sexual subcultures. And this comic is my first time writing fiction after being a lifelong comics lover and lover of genre fiction like sci-fi and horror, and but it takes a lot of the same themes of my other work of sexual undergrounds, and being produced by the sexual underground myself. I'm like a lifelong DIY punk, and have always kind of tried to figure out how to work either against the system or find ways that the system can work for me to tell the kind of stories that I want to tell, which often encounter a lot of just walls and censorship and microaggressions of all kinds when I try to put it out there. So I have so many friends who have done Kickstarters before, and I have never kind of had the right project to do it. So I was really happy to sort of realize that we were perfectly positioned after the success of the first book with Image, and Image wanted to publish a second one, that we could come up with the money to pay the artists well and also build community around the book. And it just went better than I could have possibly imagined, and was just the jolt of positive energy that I think that we all need right now, and I certainly need it this winter. So I'm really grateful, and I'm so happy to be on the panel with all of these amazing folks.
Cool. I feel like you just kind of answered every question that I intend to ask. So
I'm an overachiever. So
amazing. Thank you. Afua Richardson, tell us about you.
Hello. My name is Afua. And for the past 16 years, I've been illustrating comics and graphic novels. I received an Eisner for Black Panther World of Wakanda with Ta-Nehisi Coates. Proudly a part of the first 4 women of color there are only 2 writers, but to pen the story for Marvel. And most recently, I started working in television and film with HBO's Lovecraft Country, and I launched my first successful Kickstarter, Aquarius, the Book of Mer, for a graphic novel series, which is a modern retelling of mermaid myths and legends from all over the world, being published by Image Comics, and it'll be out on Free Comic Book Day of this year. So,
hooray! Thank you. Arune Singh, let's hear from you.
Hi, I'm Arune Singh. I was 9 when Bone first came out, Jeff. I'm sorry. That was my favorite thing when I meet creators, tell them that. And now they get, don't worry, I'm 39. I'm starting to feel it for people. But 39, I have been working in comics for the last 20 years in some form. First as a comics reporter columnist for IGN, comics reporter for Comic Book Resources at CBR. Then headed up PR at Marvel Sci-Fi, marketing at Boom Studios, and now here at Skybound. And I've previously managed campaigns on Kickstarter, including Keanu Reeves' Berserker, and then most recently Excellence and Mr. Lovenstein. Worked with great groups of people on all of those, and have written some WWE short stories that you can find in WWE Then, Now, and Forever, Volume 4. So I am the least.
I'm sorry I gave you the finger. I was actually 9 is the perfect age. So
you know what, Jeff? Honestly, I was hoping you would just like walk out completely out of frame. I'm flattered. I get to tell people the Bone guy gave me the finger. It's great.
I gave the finger to the guy that did Berserker.
I'm pretty sure I was the least important person involved in that project. But really, I'm honestly honored to be here with everybody. You're all such prolific and important people for this industry. So that's what I got.
Thank you, Arune. And Eric Powell.
I'm mostly known for independent comic called The Goon, which has been published for a lot of years by Dark Horse. And then I restarted my own publishing company called Albatross, and have been kind of moved all my projects there. And we did our first Kickstarter just recently for a true crime book I'm doing with Harold Schechter called Did You Hear What Eddie Gein Done?
Heck yeah. Okay. Man, wow. This is such a cool crew. I'm so excited to be doing this. So my first question is probably a pretty obvious one. Obviously, there are many factors that go into deciding to do crowdfunding and to do crowdfunding for your comic. So I just wonder if you can each identify what was kind of like the last straw, like the thing that was like, okay, yes, this is the thing that I'm going to do. I feel like, Tina, you already kind of talked about this a little, so I'll start with you.
Oh yeah, what I said before. I think I think that the main thing that I would want to contribute to this that is maybe unique to my work and the project of Safe Sex is the fact that, okay, so my background is in the sex industry, and I continue to do a lot of work in writing and media making, and also organizing and advocacy around sex work in general. And that includes porn, that definitely includes a lot of BDSM and kink themes, and definitely LGBTI themes as well. And a lot of the work that I do is about and I work with a lot of organizations like this great organization called Hacking Hustling, to where sex workers themselves do research and cultural criticism in terms of identifying how and why institutional censorship happens. And institutional includes like deplatforming on like marketing tools like social media. Maybe not everybody thinks of social media as a marketing tool, but it's marketing something, whether you are intending it to or not, or maybe you are being marketed, you don't even realize it. Anyway, but very specifically like deplatformed in terms of access to financial institutions such as banks, but also increasingly so much of how money is acquired and transferred, like so many of those transactions are now facilitated by tech companies and happen online. And so if tech companies have some sort of vested interest in like identifying with anything that has to do with sex, because of obscenity laws being like, I know it when I see it, and like many other reasons that people are marginalized, anything to do with sexuality, which sometimes includes portraits of cultures and identities that are associated with things that are obscene. So just like anything to do with queer people, anything to do with trans people, whether something is sexually explicit or not. My book is sexually explicit, but you know, even educational materials around queer cultures and identity and public health and relationships and all kinds of things are often censored by platforms because they can, because of puritanism, because of shame, because of all kinds of reasons. And so that means that like censorship and lack of representation actually is a material concern that keeps certain people marginalized. And of course, there are intersectional overlaps with race and class and all kinds of different things that I could go into. But basically what it boils down to is that if you're making work that makes people uncomfortable, you are institutionally cut off from a lot of money. And there are a lot of places where artists are making work online, which is increasingly like where all public space is and the entire marketplace is, and that people expect to be able to get their literature and entertainment either for free or through like certain kinds of standards of transactions. So the fact that Kickstarter is a place where like I can send Oriana like images from my book and say, which of these are like, you guys have clear standards of understanding that there are adults on this platform who have the right to access like literature that has mature themes, that has explicit themes, that is for adults, and say like, can I show like this sex act? Like, can I show these people doing this? Can I show this like level of nudity? And Oriana is like, yes, no, yes. And like, it's cool if I like can't show it on the platform itself, but like the worst thing is when you set everything up and then people are like, oh, actually you can't have that anymore. So being able to have that like real clear communication, and then to have a place where other consenting adults are like interested in mature works and can like support the book and reach the book and get their hands on the book is really just, it's important to me as a creator, but it's also important to me in terms of the like organizing and advocacy work that I do with sex worker rights movements and lots of related movements. So that's why I wanted to fund my book through Kickstarter, and why I'm like excited to continue to like make sure that Kickstarter is a place that does not like is not put under pressure by tech companies or other institutions to like not allow people to like put out work that like deals with all of the to fund and also like reach communities and like create communities around all of these themes that are very important to me in my creative and political work and life in general.
Thank you. That was a really surprising and beautiful answer. I really appreciate it.
I'm surprising and beautiful. That's my brand. Overachieving, surprising, beautiful.
I love it. I'm
Thank
trying
you.
to do a transition. Speaking of content that could make people uncomfortable, Eric, did that factor into your decision to come to Kickstarter?
No, it did affect the approach that we could take to the Kickstarter. We were actually thinking of launching another book, which is the complete opposite of what a humor book, the complete opposite of this thing. But it did hinder us, like the approach we would take to our incentives. Like, you know, we wanted to be, I don't know exactly how to phrase it, but we wanted to be, you know, respectful, and we weren't setting out to make an exploitation book. You know, we were, if anything, this is kind of a history of America of the 1950s. And so we weren't, you know, going to make Ed Gein paper masks, you know, or something like that as an incentive to, you know.
Oh, I would totally.
I know it's
I would pledge at that for sure.
But it wasn't, I know, well, among the other things that we joked about making, but we were totally not going to do, was Ed Gein paper dolls, skin suit paper dolls. So we weren't going to do that.
Oh my God! I think you left like $1 million on the table there.
We may have, but you know, again, we definitely had an approach for this book. We wanted it to be, you know, more of a serious thing and we definitely didn't want to celebrate, you know, his crimes. But so that hindered us a little bit, because we, you know, we couldn't do as many incentives as we would for another project that was maybe a little more lighthearted and fun. But I think it was a perfect platform for us, especially in indie comics. It's hard to get a lot of exposure. And with Kickstarter, I mean, it's a you know, crowdfunding and everything, but it's a built-in campaign platform, you know, where you're reaching a whole lot of people that you wouldn't reach otherwise. So I think that definitely helped us. And with the, you know, there's a lot of interest in true crime right now, and so I think from that perspective, it was pretty valuable for us to, you know, go with Kickstarter. And also, I wanted to do a really high-end book. I wanted something to look really nice, and we're a small publisher. We don't have, you know, really deep pockets. And I didn't want the initial cost of the book to be any kind of hindrance on the type of product that we could put on the table, you know? So getting to, you know, work with a really great book designer and go, hey, what's your price? You know, that kind of thing. And know we would have that cash on hand is a good thing. But yeah, those were our main, you know, exposure and being able to put out a really good product were our main incentives with, you know, going with Kickstarter.
Cool. I guess, Jeff, you know, speaking about indie publishing, you're sort of like a pioneer of the indie, and, you know, and yet this was the first time that you decided to do a book in this way. So what was the sort of like the final straw that brought you to Kickstarter?
Well, first, let me apologize for switching backgrounds here, but it was so hot outside. I put my hand on my computer and you could fry an egg on it. I was like, ah, I'm going to destroy my laptop. I was planning, like as I mentioned, Tuki was my third creator-owned self-published project. And I have a publishing company that has been with me for 30 years. Tom Gott and Kathleen Gloson and my wife, Vijaya Iyer, we've been together this whole time. And they managed to get Rassel on the New York Times bestseller list with just us. So we were gonna do that again. But then last Halloween, we had two of our old friends from the self-publishing days of the 90s, Brian Polito and his wife Francisca, and Billy Tucci and his wife Deborah, who did Lady Death and She were their two books. And we were sort of like, they stuck all of us independent self-published people together. So we all knew each other, and our booths were always near each other. And I kind of lost touch with them. And they invited Vijaya on a podcast, their podcast, Billy did. And it was supposed to be the women behind, these books, because it was Brian and Billy and I were like the cartoonists, but all of our wives were really doing all the hard stuff, all the bookkeeping and accounting and dealing with lawyers and the printers and all that. And he wanted to do a podcast about that. And in the course of that podcast, Francisca just insisted that Vijaya needed to check out Kickstarter, because apparently the Politos and the Tuccis had really do a lot of, they have successful Kickstarter campaigns all the time. So we checked out their campaigns. I don't know if you're familiar with Lady Death or the Politos, but they are very successful. I'm very familiar with their what they make, but I couldn't understand their Kickstarters to save my life. I mean, they're like super intense and crazy, and you have a million ways you can mix and match all these different things, but somebody's loving that because they do very well. Well, why not? I mean, if it's essentially self-publishing, but it's removing all gatekeepers. You don't have to convince comic book stores. You don't have to convince comic book distributors. You're just talking to the readers. And I realized immediately that this was a lot like going back to the 90s self-publishing, when you got more of a shot back then because there weren't as many of us doing it. You could prove your worth. Now this is a new way for new people to prove their worth. And to be honest, I've been around a long time. There wasn't necessarily any reason for anybody to jump on my book Tuki, because I even published it as a webcomic 5 years ago, or started it. So I felt like this was a good way for me to talk directly to potential readers and to prove that there was some worth behind this concept. And I was very happy with the result. This is a good community. It really, really is.
I will just note that Brian Polito, I think by the time this airs, his current campaign has 8 days left, so it probably will not still be live. But yeah, he's run 24 campaigns, most of which go 6 figures. He's over 200 grand on his current campaign, so it's a good one to be getting some advice from.
It's from Francisca. That's who's giving us the advice. Nice. And she's giving it to Vijaya, not to me. So that lets you know where the real power dimension really is.
I was trying to use something about that to transition to Afua, the woman behind, in your case, the woman. Tell me what brought you to Kickstarter.
Well, for me, Kickstarter is a platform that people trust. And that's something that's really important when you're trying to get people to invest in something that you care about. Being in comics, the difficult thing about selling an independent book is that you have legacies to compete against. If you are presenting a legacy character with a new writer, you have to get people to care about something they already care about, seen in a new way. This is the opposite. You have to build an audience so they care about you and how you've treated their favorite characters, and then, or at least that's how I saw it. And Aquarius, the Book of Myr, is a project that I've wanted to do for a long time, and I felt like I didn't have enough free time and resources to do it. So Kickstarter enabled me to buy my time back. And it's absolutely invaluable. I felt like either every project was just enough to get me to the next project, or I doubted that people would want my work over what they can already get that's out there. So this was very affirming for me, because as an artist, we are full of doubts and we presume that people aren't going to necessarily care about something on the shelf that is not something that they're used to, a title that they're accustomed to, or something that's familiar. As much as they say they're tired of the same old thing, they go after the same old things. So Kickstarter is something that not only has a platform that people trust, but that I trust to be able to bring something that, as others have mentioned, you know, you don't have the gatekeepers. You don't have to convince editors and publishers that this is a good idea. You have to convince your audience. It's a direct line to them, and that is invaluable. Like I don't really know any other platform that I could make that possible. And you might be able to go through a couple of other different crowdfunding sources, but the legacy that Kickstarter has for success and just the sheer number of books that go through Kickstarter gives people a little bit more confidence to invest in you. So that was something that was very, very important for my considerations. And I launched my Kickstarter Black Friday of 2020. All the months have mushed together into this one thing. I don't even know what date it is. But I was worried that with everything that was going on at the time, that people might not care. And so it not only gave me the resources to be able to make the book, but the confidence to say, okay, they want this. Okay, thank goodness. Like, I can make a thing that I know people want instead of making it and then being like, please like this. So, and then I can use that to make more books and give myself the confidence to keep moving forward on this project instead of like psyching myself out and saying that it's nobody wants mermaidy things, nobody cares. It's all of those clouds and doubts and little voices that trickle in. You can't really combat with numbers. And when people, you know, like or share it or participate, even if it's $1, it's $1 towards my ambitions and just the inner musings of my mind being made real. And also, one other thing that was difficult about just creating the book first or creating a project like this first is I'm not only creating a comic book, I am creating an album. So it's a multimedia project. I'm a musician, and before I did comics, I was a professional flautist and a background singer and voice actor. And so art was just something that I did to facilitate the music. It was like, I need a flyer, I need posters, I need these things. It was a very functional part of my life, but I loved comics and it was something that I always wanted to do, but I didn't.
Were there a lot of mermaids on your rock flyers?
What's that?
Were there a lot of mermaids on your rock flyers?
Not a one.
Which is why you have this project to get all the mermaids.
Right? It's funny, before I even did this book, I didn't really like mermaids. I didn't really get it. I was just like, what's the big deal? I don't understand. Like, what are these things? Like, they're not even based on anything real. Unicorns, I can understand. What mermaid? And so I just started doing research and trying to figure out where it came from. And then I realized that every culture not only had a flood myth, but they had this half human, half fish creature associated with them, dating all the way back to ancient Babylonia. And even as recent as, I want to say 2014, there was a dam being built in Zimbabwe. And the construction workers stopped working on the dam. They stopped being paid money on their job because they said, we are not going down there. There is an Injuzu. You cannot pay me to work. And so they hired new workers to come in who didn't believe in Injuzu. They went down, started digging, came back up, and they were just like, look, I believe in Injuzu now. And so stories like those, like that don't make any sense, or like weird Coast Guard reports in small towns out in Europe. I've been collecting these stories from the people who live there and taking some of my own stories from various indigenous cultures and my own culture and braiding it together into one story and using the legends and the different mythos to carry the story along and trying to convince a publisher to hop on board with that. They're just like, well, I don't know. And I was like, I don't care if you don't know, I believe in this. And so Kickstarter makes this possible.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. Wow, gee, I thought 6 questions was, you know, I thought I'd have enough time, but we haven't even got through one and we're halfway done this.
Oh, sorry.
It's beautiful. I love it. No, it's fine. Arune, it's like sort of a cheat to have you on this panel because it's a panel about firsts, and you've worked on 3 campaigns, but 2 of them were firsts for different companies. So I thought that you would have a really fascinating perspective. So, you know, when it's not just you deciding to pull this trigger, what's the sort of like the way that you were able to convince both, you know, the creators and the publishers to do it this way?
I can actually tell you I was not involved in those conversations, neither Boom or Skybound. But what I think I can tell you the general philosophy that's been espoused in both cases, which is that I think we all know there's a gigantic audience for comic books out there. Comics are as mainstream as they've been. If you include webtoons, if you include web comics, if you look at manga, like everyone reads some form of comics now. And in the case of starting with Berserker, we knew that a comic by Keanu Reeves had a larger audience than probably what the direct market offered. And that's not because direct market comic shops are not hustling and working their butts off every day, but it's because the physical retail has limits versus some digital channels. And there are some people who prefer digital, who prefer to shop. And there is definitely an audience who sees their stories, their voice, their existence reflected more acutely, more profoundly in the material that's available on Kickstarter in graphic novel form versus perhaps what they see from other publishers. And so, you know, whether it's Berserker, whether it's a book like Excellence by Brandon and Kari and Aaron and Emilio, whether it's something like Mr. Levenstein, which originally existed as a webcomic that Justin now collected. Each of those for those, you know, Berserk is their own kind of first. For Berserker was the first Kickstarter we did at at Boom, where we saw there was a bigger audience. Excellence at Skybound was the first time we had taken a book that had been a success in the comics direct market, book market chain distribution channels and brought it to Kickstarter. We said there's probably still a larger audience for this series that may not be going to traditional areas of purchase. And with Mr. Levenstein, it was the first time we'd taken a humorous webcomic and packaged it this way. It doesn't have, you know, an ongoing narrative in the same way that some other comics do. And I think as everybody has cited here, you know, the comics market is wonderful. Comics retailers take an incredible financial risk every month on a lot of product, but there is some product where perhaps the audience isn't fully articulated for them to know what the potential is, or that audience just doesn't go to comic stores because after a while they haven't seen themselves or the material they want reflected, so they just stop going there. And you know, in each of the projects I mentioned, we looked and said, Kickstarter offers a chance to reach a broader audience. And for the creators involved, that was a big part of the appeal. And certainly there's an economic benefit to that as well. But you know, it is about finding a larger, more diverse, more intersectional audience. And I think all of us have all been involved in comics as readers, as fans, as professionals, to say, while the comics industry has made a lot of strides, there's still a lot of room for growth. And what Kickstarter has done has really put to bed the myth that those marginalized voices can't be gigantic successes, don't have gigantic built-in audiences. And I would say that's one of the things that I love most about Kickstarter is that the commitment to elevating marginalized voices and doing so in a way that is more genuinely safe and inclusive than I think perhaps some other crowdfunding platforms are intentionally or not.
Amazing. So I'm gonna kind of like, I just watched the New York City mayoral debate last night. I'm gonna lightning round so we can get through like a few things. I'm gonna ask you quickly, well, I guess I won't start with Jeff. Quickly, the feeling, the overwhelming feeling that you had. Excellent. When you press launch, one mistake that you think you made or one thing you might do differently, and then one triumph. Okay, everyone absorb. So I'm gonna just do it. I'm gonna go around and then the other way around. So Afua.
Okay, we hit that button.
What?
We hit the button, and we had some stretch goals in mind, but we didn't really like articulate them or make a plan or pick them out because we thought we'd have time. But we hit our goal in 10 minutes, and we were like, oh, and then we were like double our goal and triple our goal, and we still didn't have stretch goals. And we're like, so that was a big mistake. You should be much more planned. We will plan better the next time for that. And what was the other part? What, something that we had right?
I was gonna do it 1, 2, 3, but okay. Like
Oh, I can do 1, 2, 3. I'm out.
Okay, I was gonna do the feeling you felt when you pressed launch. So I'm doing that first. So now I've started with Jeff. I'll go Eric next. What was the feeling when you pressed launch?
Fear. Because I mean, also as I've made my living doing independent comics, and I realize this is an entertainment business. So your star can rise and fall, you know, at the whim of the readers. So I'm always of the fear that, well, tomorrow no one's going to care about what I'm doing. And you know, you're putting yourself out there when you do a Kickstarter. I mean, and if say I don't raise the money to, you know, fund my book, then it becomes Eric couldn't, you know, get his Kickstarter backed. So I'm always looking at the negative. I don't know why. So that was what I felt, absolute fear, but no, it went really well. So I'm happy about that.
Amazing. Arune, what was the feeling each of the times you pressed launch?
Please, please, please don't be the campaign that doesn't get funded. Not because I ever think it's gonna be that way, but because the minute you get too cocky, that's when you know it's all gonna fall apart.
Nice. Afua, what was your feeling when you launched?
Terror! Oh my gosh, I was absolutely terrified. I had uploaded my video. I didn't have a lot prepared. My video was all like mashed up, and so I was sweating. There was literal sweat, just giant drips. I was like, ah! And I thought because I launched it so late in the day, I was just like, I wanted to get everything finished by like 9 a.m. And I didn't. I was tweaking it until 7 p.m. And I was like, I'm going to fail. And then I reached my goal in about less than 3 days. So I was relieved. Next time though, I will be completely, well, I say completely, but there are always things that you just can't anticipate, but I will be a lot more prepared with overflow goals, and I want to have a lot more of the artwork done for it to just show people directly what it is they can get and have a lot more mock-ups.
Nice. All right, well, so you've hopped ahead too. I'm keeping this all in my brain. Tina, what was your feeling when you launched?
You know, I launched at midnight and I was gonna just like set it and forget it and then like wake up in the morning and like see how things were doing. And I like understand that there's a global audience and different time zones, but I was like, I like launched it and then like had a nightcap to celebrate. And then like before I went to bed, I was like, I guess I'll just like make sure I actually did like launch it. And we made like $5,000 before I went to sleep. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like people like want it immediately. And then I woke up in the morning and I think we had made like another $5,000 and I was like, I love making money while I sleep.
Flip, not even counting.
Totally.
Yeah.
I usually tell people you should feel equal parts excitement and fear, but it sounds like maybe I should let people know they'll be more weighted toward the fear. I guess that's you are. Okay, so a thing you would do differently. So Jeff, you said you'd have stretch goals in mind earlier? Anything else that you feel like you would want to do differently the next time you come on?
I mean, everything. I mean, it was a learning experience from the get-go. I mean, and I mentioned earlier, I have a team that's been with me for over 25 years. And I have much confidence in them. But it was everything they had to keep up with this new thing that had such momentum and speed. I mean, the amount of questions that came in immediately was overwhelming. We had all four of us were answering questions. You know, it was just crazy. We actually split it up so that everybody had 4-hour shifts. So we went from 8 a.m. to 8 at night. I didn't have a shift. I was still trying to actually get the book put together and finish the covers and stuff. But yeah, there's no way to completely prepare for something so brand new and so many moving parts. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm just looking. Yeah, your campaign got almost 300 comments just on the Kickstarter page, and I assume that
I don't know how many comments I've gotten since it's closed. Did everybody get this comment? Oh, I didn't really. I just missed the Kickstarter. Can I still get in?
Oh,
No.
you had
That's not
30.
how it works.
No, for God's sakes, no. We're done.
Okay, Eric, what's something that you'll do differently if you do this?
I mean, we had the exact same experience. This was our first Kickstarter, and speaking of women running, you know, things behind the scenes, Andrea, you know, my girlfriend and pretty much business partner, was running the Kickstarter, and you know, she was fielding all of this stuff. Just did an amazing job for being thrown, you know, into the water. But yeah, I think if I had it to do over again, I wish that this had not been our first. I wish that this had been one where we had built up. Like I said, we were thinking of doing one with a comedy book and something like that. I wish that we had done something that would have had a little bit more of a broader. We could have made a little bit more of a broader campaign. But I haven't. But other than that, we don't have any regrets about it. We did. I set a personal goal and we hit that, so I'm pretty happy about it.
Awesome.
We did a lot of pre-planning, so I feel like we were pretty prepared when it launched. But again, we didn't do a lot of the things that we could have done to do a better campaign. We didn't have any stretch goals really. We added a limited edition sketchbook once we hit our goal, but we didn't have any real stretch goals with this, because again, because of the content, it made it a little bit harder to do fun incentive items. But again, I think if we would have done something else and had more fun items, and then been able to carry that audience that we had built, our followers and everything on Kickstarter, into this campaign, I think it would have been a little bit better.
Cool. Arune, what will you do differently the next time I have your name in my inbox?
What would I do differently? I think I would probably try to hit the deadlines you set for me, so you don't have to chase me. That's only 2 out of 3 campaigns. The latest one, I think we shout out to Alex Anton. We hit the deadlines. No, honestly, I think in every case, what I would do and what I've learned is to set up a recurring structure that allows me to build time and say, before I need to start X or Y 2 months before the campaign is going to go live, or 3 months, or 2 weeks, whatever my efficiencies and the team I'm working with are, because it is truly a team effort for a company perspective. So many people involved. And it's, I think as all of you know, because you're all wearing multiple hats or multiple people, or just driving yourself nutty. But I would plan further ahead to allow myself time to get things to Kickstarter ahead of time to better identify opportunities. I'd say we definitely really proud of what we were able to accomplish as a team with Mr. Levenstein presents failure, and a big part of that, Oriana, is your help that you're able to set up with the marketing opportunities through Kickstarter. It's because we came to you early enough. And I think the comics industry, for worse, not for better, is used to turning on a dime with everything. And, just one more little thing, which is really like this Russian nesting doll of 20 things when you get to it. And it's a habit we have to unlearn. And so working with Kickstarter, I think, forces us as companies all to treat this comics process with slightly longer lead time. And I hope that kind of bleeds over to a lot of other processes.
Nice. That's a great answer. I really loved that one. Afua, what would you, you said you would come stretch goals sooner, I think?
Absolutely. I also wrote down more things that I would do. I would make a lot more visual media to post across all platforms every day with a countdown, because people don't understand. Like, this is when you have to do this. You can't hop on after. And then even considering that, knowing that they're going to be stragglers, I think I would create a limited pre-order page on my website. So just in case people did miss it, it's like, okay, I know. Here is something that's not everything that you could have gotten through the Kickstarter, but it is a way that you can still hop on board, but know that this is just a pre-order and the delivery time will be when everything else gets delivered. I would also have a team. I did a lot of things by myself and I would kind of focus on tiered exposure. I wouldn't go to all of my media outlets at once. I would say like first week here, second week here, third week here, because there's always that lag in the middle that people don't necessarily tell you about. It's just like, boom, all right, you've got your Kickstarter going, and then nobody cares about me. And then in those last final hours, it's like, they do love me, they just forgot. And then you slide across the finish line, or you hit it out of the park immediately. And then even with that, there is this dip in the platform. They're like, you got it already. And then people realize once that clock hits and it's like, you have 4 hours until this is gone forever. Then they're like, oh no, I want to be a part of this. And so that's when they all hop on it. But knowing that and saying, okay, well, I want to utilize this sort of ticking clock that makes people impulse buy. I'm going to put these things out there to keep people incentivized, but also understand the currents of campaign and say, okay, well, this is when I kind of have to surf the rough a little more and be conscious of that in my media.
Nice. Tina, what would you do differently?
First, I'll apologize if I get glitchy because my internet connection is unstable and I have done everything I can to try to fix it. Yeah, okay, so like in dog training, and I'm sure this is true of other things as well, like in dog training, you'll get like 2 people who are like equally qualified experts telling you to do the exact different thing, and they're like, you absolutely must do this, right? So you kind of have to like find the middle road, or you can't like short circuit being like, well, how do I untangle this paradox? It's like, you got to pick a path and then like see what happens and what works for you. And like, I definitely had like, so I hired my friend Henry Barajas to do some consulting. And I also had some other friends who have done work on this like queer and like diverse children's book campaign called Flamingo Rampant. And like, they were like, you should do a soft launch to like create a sense of like exclusivity. And then Henry was like, don't do that. Like, you're going to get like the most people, like it, like gamify it, people are going to be like, yes, it's live, I want it, And so I was just like, which do I do? And so I like tried to do the soft launch. And then there was like so much money coming in. And I was like, okay, Henry was actually right. I'm saying that for the record here at San Diego Comic-Con, Henry's right. And so then I was like, and then on all my social media, I was like, I was trying to keep a secret, but I can't keep the secret any longer. Like, head on over to my Kickstarter. So I think we rolled with it, but in the future, I think that and I don't have like a game brain. I'm like very much like a story brain person, and I understand you can tell stories through games, but like that's just like like don't have that pleasure receptor. I like don't understand games or like gambling, you know, so that sense of like, yes, like this thing's happening now, or like, oh, it's like last chance to see. So what I'm saying is marketing is like dog training, and running a Kickstarter campaign is, you have to think of it like a game, like you're the house in a casino. So I'm gonna try to like do both of those things like a little bit more in the future, because it's hard for me to imagine myself as like, when I pledge Kickstarter campaigns, which I do all the time, I don't tend to be incentivized by like it's live now, oh god, it's about to, you know, or there's this new thing. Like I kind of do it when I'm an anarchist, so I just like do it when I feel like it. But yeah, I think I would be mindful that like not everyone is me in the future.
Okay, we have less than 10 minutes, so I'm gonna say, I want you, like, if you could share one moment from the course of running the campaign that was just felt really triumphant, really lovely, whether that was funding or if like some other kind of thing happened, then I will ask you all to tell folks where to find you and your work, and then we're out. Who have I not started with? I think Arune, I don't think I ever started with you. A moment of triumph from one of your campaigns.
That's okay. I don't think my voice needs to be the one at the front, but thank you anyway. Moment of triumph. Honestly, I have to say, I'll go back to the first one because there's nothing like your first, and seeing the final number for Berserker, and hopefully at the time of this campaign, this is still true, or this panel is still true, but topping the graphic novel list, the 1.4 something million was wild and really satisfying for something that. You know, first time any of us ever worked on a campaign like that. So it was a really special moment. Really proud of it. And I will say the second feeling, which will probably be true when this panel goes live, is how do I say this? The campaign will have ended, but it'll be the first Kickstarter that I'll have launched in June, in which I actually have a story I've written in it. So I'm really excited to see how that does. And, past me is telling future me, you did good. So there we go.
Amazing. Tina, a moment of triumph from your campaign.
You know, I think that my biggest moment of triumph was seeing how quickly the cameos, the cameo tier, which we limited so that we wouldn't overwhelm G. Romero Johnson, the artist on the book, with those, but we also, for the same reason, made it was the most expensive tier by far, and it sold out the fastest, and I was like, that makes me feel fancy. And then G was generous enough to be like, yeah, I'll do more cameos, so we like added more cameos, and like those sold out, and you know, now we also have the follow-up triumph of like people sending me lots of like hot pictures of themselves for me to send to G, and like being able to like it as a creator, sometimes I forget how valuable it is, like how much it means to people to like see their name, like, or like as a podcaster, I'm always amazed that like people, my like Patreon patrons, like just want to hear their name like and be thanked like on the show, and so it's nice to see that something that we can like create a sense of like exclusivity around and be like, we're worth it, and then people are also like, yes, I want that. So that was fun.
Heck yeah. Jeff, moment of triumph. Oh no, I think you're on mute. It's not a Zoom panel without one mute, unmute.
Right. Well, I had Vijay came home, and I was just keeping it quiet. Well, I mean, obviously, the hitting our goal so fast was definitely one level, but I think from the overall campaign, I was a little overwhelmed by how happy everybody was in their questions, in their comments. These were many people who read Bone when they were young, you know, when they were kids, and then have read it again with their kids, and they were so happy to be part of this new book that I was doing, that I have no other word for it than I was overwhelmed by that. It was another level of happiness. It was really good. So I would say that was my favorite thing about the whole campaign.
I love that.
And before, I want to make sure, is it okay if Oriana shares your emails with me? Because I run a show with my wife and some other people in Columbus called CXC, and I think you guys would be freaking great guests on it for that. And probably next year we'll be able to be live in person again. So if that's okay, have Oriana share. That'd be good.
Kickstarter Comics, making connections.
CXC.
Every exchange. Thank you. That was so sweet. Afua, a moment of triumph.
It's interesting. Part of this book is about a dream that I had of my great grandfather when I was really, really young, and he was one. I mean, I was one when he passed away, so I don't really know how I remembered him, but I did. And it was my grandmother Maud's father, and I was going to a couple of days after or before I launched the Kickstarter, she passed away. So I didn't get to tell her that this is what I was doing, that I was going to surprise her and put him in the book and then put her in the book, and just so it was very emotional for me, even just putting this out there. And members of her church and relatives I didn't know I had reached out and contributed to the campaign. And these were people I'd never met before. They didn't know me, but when they heard about what I was doing, it was their contributions that like pushed it. And there was also suffered a lot.
Oh, Afua, I think you're freezing and you're saying something really meaningful. Shit. Oh no.
Precious Baggins.
Let's see. Afua, turn your camera off and on or something. I'm gonna have Eric answer and then come back to you so we like get the full weight of your words. Eric, moment of triumph.
I think the moment the campaign ended and no one canceled all of their pledges. I was like, I was counting it down. I was counting it down. You know, I that paranoia of everyone's going to cancel 5 minutes before this is over. But
cool. I don't know. Afua,
yeah, let her finish. It was so good.
I know. I wanted to like meet the moment. Talk to us again, Afua.
It looks like she's still delayed.
Oh, darn it.
We can see you, Afua. Can you hear us?
Yay! Yay!
Okay, tell us your incredibly meaningful story, please.
Of course, that's when the internet dies. Well, long story short, a lot of people who may not have said anything before that moment, they reached out and they contributed to the campaign, and it was their contributions that enabled me to hit my goal. So, yep, me and my older sister ugly cried, and I was like, "This can be real now." Yep, crying.
That's really beautiful.
That's really, yeah, that's
the internet gods for making stretching that up. Oh boy. Okay, you guys, we are out of time, so super quick, where can people find you on the internet, follow your work, etc.? Afua, I'll start with you in case anything dies again.
Well, you can visit my website at Richardson, afuarichardson.com. And I'm on Instagram as Dr. Fu, DOCTAFOO.
Beautiful. Jeff, where can people find you?
Boneville.com is our website, and at Jeff Smith Bone is my Twitter handle.
Beautiful. Arune, do you want to be found?
I don't know. That's so profound, isn't it? You can find me on Twitter at Arune, ARUNE, and then on Instagram at Arune Singh. And you can find the latest on Skybound at skybound.com.
Excellent. Tina, where can people find you?
So my website is tinahorn.net. I am on Twitter and Instagram at tinahornsass. And you can buy Safe Sex Protection wherever fine books and comic books are sold. I highly recommend going to your local book or comic book store and seeing what else they have while you're picking it up. And Safe Sex Terms of Service will be out from Image Comics this fall, thanks to my Kickstarter backers and the incredible art team and everyone at Image. And where else? Who else am I? Oh yeah, and if you want to listen to my podcast, it's Why Are People Into That? And you can listen to that wherever you pod.
Amazing. Eric, where can people find you?
thegoon.com and albatrossfunnybooks.com. And there are links to all of our social media platforms on there.
Beautiful. I am at Oriana BKLYN on Twitter and Insta. Twitter, I talk a whole lot about Kickstarter comics and publishing. On Instagram, I take pictures of sunsets and cookies that I've baked. So make your choices. Oh my gosh. Thank you all so much. This was incredible.
Thank you for having us, Oriana. Thank you for all your hard work.
Yeah, round of applause for Oriana.
I'll take it. And then I'll remember how to stop recording. Bye, SDCC.